Hello, welcome to NoCo Summer Solstice. This is Dan from CBD Seed Labs. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes with Mr. Moses Levin, founder and CEO here at CBD Seed Labs. We're going to talk all about what it takes to pull out a successful hemp crop and hemp harvest starting right now, and why it is actually not late at all, but the perfect time to plant hemp. So without further ado, here we go with Mr. Mo Levin. What's up, Mo? How you doing, bud?
Doing really good. How are you?
Good, thanks. You ready to talk about some late season hemp planting?
I always love talking about hemp.
Nice. Okay, what do you got behind you there, bud?
These are some of our AC/DC. These are kind of an example of what a late season plant might look like. These are from a trial garden of ours.
Put one of those things in. Let's take a look at that.
We go ahead and flower at just 18 days from seed, and then these are 54 days into flower. Nice structure, nice golf ball size, dense, well developed, sticky flowers that are almost to their point of compliance at 54 days.
Nice.
Want to harvest at about 8 weeks into flower with AC/DC. And got a real full developed flower with a full terpene profile.
Nice. That's some happy looking hemp right there, isn't it?
They look pretty good. Yeah, we're happy with AC/DC. Definitely. Past the trial runs, looking great.
So Mo, we're here really to talk about what it's like to start a late season planting plan, or a little bit later season hemp crop. And tell me right off the top, what's the first thing that jumps to your mind that you need to do when you're doing a late season hemp crop?
First thing that you need to do when you're doing a late season hemp crop, you're going to prepare your fields, prepare your areas. You're going to have a lot more time to do that.
Yep.
Plant a few more seeds.
Now I get a lot of questions about that. I'm sure you do too. When you say a few more seeds, how many more seeds are we going to plant on a late season hemp crop?
Well, if you plant early, you're going to have big spacing so that you can grow really big plants.
Right.
The later you plant, the smaller your plants are going to be. The more you're going to tighten up your centers, and you're going to end up with a similar, if not the same, amount of harvest from more plants with less time growing.
So you mean like you're going to get the same like total yield from your field? Is that what you're saying?
Up to a point.
Okay.
You can't go too late. If you go past the solstice into August and you're planting, your plants will remain this size. They will not veg out much. They will remain small, and you would have to plant a tremendous amount of plants. If you're going late, then you're going to have to plant the density of an autoflower.
Okay.
You can plant a full season plant into the fall, and it'll react exactly like an autoflower. It'll do this. If you plant before the solstice, every week that you plant before the solstice, and before about a month after the solstice, will exponentially increase the size of plant that you end up harvesting.
Right on. So it sounds like you're saying, like, as long as you're planting in like June or July, you're fine, right?
There's actually, in my opinion, a sweet spot and a really nice window. When you plant too early, you get giant plants. Giant plants.
Wait. Why don't I want giant plants?
I'm about to giant plants.
I want like big 10-foot high plants, no? Like filled with buds, no?
You think you wanted those, but in actuality, the amount of input that you put into giant plants, not only on the beginning end, taking care of small seedlings through the spring, but in the end, when you're harvesting giant plants and when you're mitigating pests through giant plants, smaller plants that are maybe a maximum of about 6 feet of height, that's going to be really manageable to harvest. The least amount of input before flower, and hopefully the least amount of IPM during your entire program.
No, I know IPM, but just in case there are visitors or listeners rather that don't know IPM, what's IPM mean?
That's your integrated pest management. These plants attract pests, and
everything wants to eat them.
Everything wants to eat them. They're definitely desirable to all creatures, and some are desirable less. Some strains are more resistant than others. All hemp will be exposed to pest management, and the bigger your plants are, the more pest management you have to do.
So a benefit of it sounds like you're saying a benefit of planting later is you have smaller plants that are more manageable, and you won't need to spend as much time managing pests. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think another benefit is of planting a little later and having smaller plants?
Um,
Like, is the labor easier or is it harder?
definitely you're going to reduce the amount of labor.
Okay.
The labor of harvesting giant plants and maintaining their structure. As plants get really big, they want to fall over.
Right.
If you keep your plant before it gets to that point where it weighs itself out, right in that 5, 6, 7 foot range, when the plant has a really sturdy structure, so that's going to really decrease the amount of labor you have to do supporting the structure of your plants, as well as getting them out of the field, whether you're harvesting by hand or mechanically. A big giant plant is just all over the place.
Yeah, have you ever harvested like a 10, 15 foot plant?
I have.
Sucks, right?
They suck to harvest. They suck to harvest with machines, and they suck even more by hand. Now, granted, you get a lot more out of that 15-foot plant as far as yield, but when you actually do the math, the input that you put into it versus the input that you save doing a smaller plant, you're going to want to tighten up your smaller plants a little bit more. But when you do the math, you end up with a more efficient system by planting a bit later and managing smaller plants through your field.
So it actually sounds like you're saying that planting late is like, maybe we have the wrong definition of what late is, and planting in June is probably actually the best time to plant. Is that kind of sounds like?
I think June into the beginning of July is your best time to get your plants in the ground. Anything before that, too big of plants, too much input goes into them. Anything after that, and you just end up having to do too many plants. Unless you want to stick with really small plants and a really easy harvesting technique, but at that point, I think you're going to reduce your overall yield in your field.
Now, how much do you think that plant would yield when it's all said and done right there?
This plant weighs, when it's dried and trimmed, you're going to get, probably less than 2 ounces of flour, maybe an ounce of flour.
Not that much. So you need a lot of plants.
You need a lot of plants that are that size on a field to get a really significant yield. So there's definitely a sweet spot. You don't want to go too late. You don't want to go too early. That sweet spot's pretty wide though. June, July.
So it sounds like you're saying, like, really, we kind of have to move past that old cannabis mind state of plant in April and May, grow big bombers. Instead, planting in June or July is probably better with a little tighter spacing. We're not limited on numbers. It's going to be way easier for labor. It's going to be way easier for integrated pest management. It's going to be easier to work on harvest-wise. It's just going to be easier all around, right? Is that kind of what I'm getting?
I think in most cases. Now, there are some drawbacks that I think should be discussed.
What are some of the drawbacks?
I think one drawback is if you're planting late into the summer, you're dealing with very hot weather.
Hot weather, yes, for sure.
So a lot of climates, your weather is going to be temperate enough that you're okay.
Okay.
There are a lot of climates where it's just too hot.
We're like thinking like the south or the southwest now, mostly. Maybe even the southeast.
Maybe south desert areas. You're talking about Imperial Valley of California, Nevada. Areas where you just
Texas, maybe
areas of Texas where the heat is oppressive at that time of season. So if you put a tiny little seedling in the ground in that oppressive heat, it might not make it. Whereas if you put a seedling that's been started for you and allowed to veg for a couple of weeks and is already ready to go with a mature root ball, I think that's going to give you a major advantage if you are planting in a hot climate.
Right.
This is only a disadvantage if you're planting in that excessive heat climate. If you're planting in temperate zones, you can plant seedlings in the ground in the hottest of days, and they'll just soak up that sun and love it.
They'll love it, right?
They will love it, and their roots will reach down deep, and their leaves will soar up high.
All right, so you're talking about seedlings, and whether you get them from like a nursery or professional nursery or you start them in your own greenhouse, there's some definite advantages, especially if you're planting a little bit later in the season, to getting those starting from seedlings. What's up, Chloe? Starting from seedlings instead of just direct sowing, right?
Definitely.
Pretty clear, no matter what, seedlings are better.
Absolutely, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit more about this ACDC plant that you have here. You already talked about it. It's a beautiful looking plant, right?
Well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Now that one, that's the carophylline dominant one, right?
AC/DC has a very unique terpene profile that exactly is super high in caryophyllene, which has a myriad of uses and benefits, and just a really powerful, potent smell.
Right. What does that one smell like?
It's a really strong, fuely, skunky, minty, orangey.
Like a skunk walking through a mint patch.
Yes.
Eating a lemon.
It has all sorts of different notes to it.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very complex smell.
That's a good one for like smokable flower, you think?
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
And a really, really strong flavor. It's not sweet and fruity. There are a lot of strains out there that are floral and very sweet and light. This is
not one of them.
Definitely strong, earthy, skunky, peppery, easily. Yeah.
So now, we have some pictures, and we'll show these in the video. When did you start those in the field this last year, the AC/DCs?
AC/DC were put in the field. The seedlings went into the ground the third week of July. The seedlings were started the first week of July.
So
seeds germinated first week of July. Potted seedlings went in the ground.
That's a lot of wind.
2.5 weeks later.
Yeah. So and those plants ended up like at least head high overhead, right?
There were plants that were 14 feet tall. The average plant was 10 to 12, but a couple of the exceptional ones, yeah.
So planting that one later is even better, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This plant is a very vigorous, fast-growing plant.
Mm-hmm.
Some plants have a genetic tendency to stay small and stocky.
Mm-hmm.
This is not one of them. This one spreads out. It wants to fill in a lot of space, and because it spreads out, it gives each flower plenty of room to mature with a really nice leaf-to-calyx ratio.
Pause for a sec. I'm going to zoom in on that, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, show us that leaf-to-calyx ratio. That thing's nice, isn't it?
You can see it's just the vast majority of what's growing here is flower. Mm-hmm. When it does come time to manicure it, it's just
real simple.
And the rest is flower.
Oh, I could smell that from here, man. It looks so good.
Which is, that's very important if you're growing for flower.
Mm-hmm.
If you're growing for biomass, it doesn't matter. But if you're growing for flower, which I know a lot of farmers want to be able to have a portion of their crop come out as flower, the amount that you put into manicuring that flower
right.
Is very key to the amount of profit you get out of that flower. Now, if you can really diminish and reduce your manicure by starting out with a flower that has a really high leaf-to-calyx ratio, then you're going to have a much more efficient harvest and a much more desirable flower when it's all said and done.
It kind of sounds like when you're starting late, if you pick the right genetics, that grow a little quicker, that finish a little quicker, that have a good leaf-to-calyx ratio, that's a benefit, right?
Absolutely.
And then from an IPM perspective, it's going to be easier to start a little bit later, right?
Definitely easier, much less input, and much more successful.
What about like newts and soil prep? Will that be easier as well, starting a little bit later?
Your plants are going to take much less out of the soil. They're going to need much less.
Okay.
So, absolutely. If there are inputs necessary in terms of nutrients, the bigger the plants, the more inputs are necessary.
Got it.
And when a plant reaches a certain point in its size, it may have drained up its available inputs from the soil around its root base, and then you got to put in inputs. And if you can avoid that by keeping a plant the size of the nutrients that are in the soil and unlocking those nutrients with something as simple as compost tea and beneficial bacteria, then you're going to be able to not deplete your field, not put any nutrient inputs in, and have a real successful harvest.
Nice. So, and really, that's just the goal for everyone, right? To get a successful harvest.
I think that's everybody's goal.
Right? I mean, like, that's why everyone's here. That's why we're doing this. We want a successful hemp harvest. We want to grow great hemp, right?
We want to grow something that's beautiful, that yields well, that smells good, that sells good, and that's where your success is. And that's what's going to keep you growing hemp every year. And providing something that's really worthwhile providing.
And like you mentioned, it's kind of maybe just a little bit of outdated thought that it's too late, because really June and July is probably the best time to plant.
I think so.
This is when everyone should be planning to plant. Like,
yes.
like moving forward, like we should be planning to plant in June and July, not thinking that, oh, we got to get everything in the ground in April or May. June and July is perfect, right?
I definitely think so. And I think scrambling through the spring, preparing things more on the back end, preparing your drying process, preparing your manicuring process.
Use spring for that stuff.
Preparing your storage process, preparing your market.
Mm-hmm.
Those are much more important than getting your plants in the ground early. Once you have all those things in place, there's still plenty of time to get your plants in the ground and to work backwards from your end goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a much more successful plan than starting with seeds early and trying to grow the biggest plant without really having an idea what you're going to do with it.
Right. So Mo, what other sort of tips or tricks do you have? What else do you want to say to everyone out here? I mean, we're giving this nice presentation to the good folks at NOCO, Summer Solstice. What else do they need to know if they're going to just kick ass this year growing?
First of all, I think this is a really good year to grow hemp.
Why is that?
I think last year was kind of a bad year to grow hemp. Too many folks jumped on it, and a lot of those folks weren't farmers and they weren't hemp growers. They were just folks who wanted to make $1 million.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of those folks got a little burnt and maybe grew material that was subpar and flooded the market and kind of made it tough for the rest of the hemp farmers who did grow a good quality product and did work hard to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, all those guys are gone this year.
They are, aren't they?
A lot of guys
They're all
burned.
dropping out.
70% of farmers and the acreage that farmed hemp last year are not farming it this year.
So everyone this year is like in it to win it.
Supply and demand is going to be a whole different ball game at the end of this year. And so I think if this is your year to grow hemp, you've chosen a good year.
And a good
keep
time.
Keep it small, keep it manageable. Quality, number one, is your focus, not quantity. And producing something that you can be proud of is going to pay off in the long run.
There you go. Thanks, Mo. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Great talking to you, Dan.
Absolutely. So there you go. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Moses Levin, founder and CEO here at CBD Seed Labs. If you have any questions, I encourage you to give us a call at 442-222-8595 or hit us up with an email to moses@cbdseedlabs.com. I hope you have a wonderful rest of this conference, a wonderful rest of the summer, and a wonderful year planting hemp or doing whatever it is you're doing. Peace and God bless. Thank you.